businesses, minority and female workers, and city residents. So the medical campus, the business leaders in this community are supporting that. That's critically important. And I guess I should be exclusively focusing my time to talk about barriers, since we are at the medical campus, on scientific things. But I do want to say, you are someone your entire career that has been breaking down barriers for other people. I want to thank you for that. As a mayor, I think it's important to have more investment in public infrastructure. And we have seen with infrastructure resources and investments that we have made, that there is a multiplier effect in the private sector, where the private sector comes in and then makes more investment, and that gives us the ability to create jobs and put more people in our community to work.
Wonderful. Last but not least, Dr. Clemens.
Thank you. Actually, I think everything that came to my mind was just hit upon. Athenix has done very well with the support of the local government and the state government, very well, and we continue to do well. One of the things that will be a challenge for us will be maintaining our growth and being able to recruit people here. They have to have housing, they have to have competitive wages, obviously, they have to have a quality of life that they'd want to be here. And that's one challenge. Fortunately, it's going so far so good for us. But the other thing I think that's really important is to come back to basic research. So I go back to my basic research roots. Like Dr. Johnson, I'm thrilled to hear of more commitment to federal funding, because the paradigm of academic versus pharmaceutical and this great divide is completely broken down now. The new paradigm is a close collaboration between private pharmaceuticals and small, highly innovative academic labs. And there's a big need to actually be able to get those ideas and to be able to collaborate with academic labs and fuel the pipeline for future drugs. Without more federal research, that will dry up. And the effect on, you say, okay, well, it's not going to have much of an effect on it's going to have a huge effect on the pharmaceutical companies. And by extension, it's going to have a huge effect on those companies to thrive, and for that ripple effect to go out, to be able to hire people, to keep the economy going and to keep the economy strong. So there's a real marriage now between private and between public, and the funding it's critical, absolutely critical, not just to maintain individual laboratories, but it fuels actually the whole industry from the bottom up. It's really critical, so I'm very happy to hear that.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we're almost out of time, but would you be willing to take maybe a question or two from the audience?
I would love to.
It's up to you,
absolutely.
Secretary.
And we've got people behind us as well as
okay.
in front of us and to the side of us. So,
does anybody have a question for the Secretary?
People who are here who may have their own views. Yes. Wait, I'm going to come up here and I'll give you the microphone.
Thank you. As a PhD researcher, I'm just wondering if you have any more plans for, getting young people interested in science again. When I was young, that was like a huge thing for me, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it's kind of fallen off for younger kids now.
Well, I should really ask you and some of your colleagues, what are the best ways of doing this? But, we do have to have a very robust pipeline in the STEM subjects that we encourage, support, convince young people to go into. And I think there are lots of things. I mean, obviously, their exposure in elementary and secondary school plays a big role. Is science something that is presented in a way that makes it seem like it's exciting and it has a future? Is it absolutely the case that there will be a level playing field? Or is somebody who looks like me or somebody who looks like Derek sort of shunted off to the side and say, well, we better, let's concentrate on other people for the STEM subjects? So we do have to break down some of the educational barriers that stand in the way of every school having that core science curriculum. And if they can't provide it within the school walls, how do they provide it virtually, online, mobile, whatever it might be? And I think that we have to reconfigure how we teach science and how we make science exciting and attractive to people. And again, I would stress everybody, you know, particularly minorities and women, because what happens in both cases, and there's a lot of research for this, is that a lot of discouragement sets in early, and the culture in classes as you get further up the scale, maybe the end of high school, certainly into college, getting into the job market, that there are subtle and maybe not so subtle signals being sent to women and minority students or candidates or employees. And this is a problem we're still struggling with. So, I mean, to see somebody like Candace head the Roswell Center is a big deal, because it's a strong message that stick with it. You know, merit works, hard work pays off, but we've got to have a big safety net so that, you know, young people don't get discouraged. And I want Candace to respond, but the last thing I would say about this is, you know, we actually have fewer women today graduating with a degree in computer sciences than we did 30 years ago. So something has gone awry. And part of what's gone awry is the kind of messages that young women get, particularly in the tech world. It's not, I don't think I think that may be a more difficult environment than in, you know, the health sciences and the medical world. But in the tech world, you know, I just saw a recent survey comparing education levels, experience levels between men and women, and at every single stage in the tech employment picture, high school graduates to postdoc graduates, men are paid more and are given much more support and encouragement. And I want to commend a couple of the CEOs in Silicon Valley who actually took the challenge to look at their pay scales, because people kept saying you're not paying women equally, you're not recruiting minorities, you're not treating them in an equal way. And so a couple of the CEOs did not believe that, and they actually investigated their pay scales and looked at the profiles of their employees, and they learned to their chagrin that indeed that was true. And so we need a lot more transparency, a lot more thoughtful self-analysis, and we've got to figure out how we're going to give more kids the exposure to science like you had that made you feel like, hey, this is fun, this is something I want to do. Candace?
So, you know, one of the things in my role that I take very seriously, and I know that you do too, is the role model that I play for women. And I've always, I'm involved very heavily in STEM here in the Buffalo area, and my door is always open. And people contact me. I've gotten emails from people all over the country that want to talk about sort of their situation. And you know, we've come a long way, but we haven't come all the way. And there are still issues, and it is difficult. And if you're a minority woman, oh my goodness, you've got even other challenges. And so it's tough. And so I think that I think we have to just keep encouraging them, because I think even young children, it gets developed even in the schools, even in people that think they're being progressive. There's sort of a tone sometimes. So we still have work to do, but it's, you know, we're making progress.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We have time for one more question. Who has a question for the Secretary? Come on now. Okay, please. Just maybe hand the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. I just appreciated your comments about ArtSpace and your work with the city to bring that to Buffalo. And in addition to the original Live Workspace and Gallery, it's now the home for the Buffalo Center for Arts and Technology, which just speaks to a lot of what you were talking about in the marriage of the arts and creative industries and the power of the arts in neighborhood revitalization, in healthcare, veteran services. And so I'm very interested to hear, you know, if you are fortunate enough to become president, how we can advance the arts, not just for art's sake, but married to the advancement of our cities, our communities, and our industries. Thanks.
Well, I have followed the development of ArtSpace from it being a live-work space to being a much more collaborative, outreaching location with the training and other programs that are part of it. And I think that you have hit the nail, so to speak. You have said it well. The arts are a major reason for urban revitalization. You know, you see it in cities where oftentimes the modern pioneers are the artists, and they go into places that are run down and often dilapidated or need at least a lot of work to get them livable and workable. But they do it in part because, you know, they're often just starting out. They don't have resources, so they're looking for places that they can live and work. But if they are successful and if they are supported in their efforts, you again see another anchor in neighborhoods, so that then the coffee shops come, and then the retail comes, and then, you know, more housing comes. And what is a real advantage of a lot of our upstate New York cities is that we have this highly developed physical infrastructure. You know, so many cities have developed and continue to do so by moving out, taking, you know, green space, and then they have to bring the sewer lines and the electricity, and they have to develop everything. We have all of that in upstate, in our cities. What we've got to do is just spark the imagination to determine what the reuse, the new use of these existing buildings could be. And I think that attracting artists is one of the most important ways to really fuel economic development in urban areas. So I clearly would love to see even more of the kind of mixed use, the kind of attraction to artists. When we were talking about art space here some years ago and trying to attract it to come here and give us the stamp of approval that we could have an art space in Buffalo, you know, I used to joke that we should have like a homesteading act in cities for artists and entrepreneurs and innovators, and really have a city kind of take over some of this housing structure, because you can attract people who are willing to put sweat equity in, who are willing to be there for the long term, and they bring with them a lot of advantages. So I see this as one of the keys, particularly for older Northeast, Midwest cities that still have a lot of charm, still have a lot of bricks and mortar, have all the utilities in place. If done right, it can be a real magnet for people to come here for reasons besides the medical campus.
Thank you so much, Secretary. I'd like to thank the panelists, our wonderful audience. I told your advance team that I knew you'd be thrilled to see all the progress here, and I hope that you are. We're so excited that you chose the Jacobs Institute and to come to Buffalo today, and we look forward to welcoming you back as President Clinton in the very near term. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.